I know what you're thinking. Didn't John do an Oppenheimer movie thing? No. Last week I had some friends on that wanted to talk about science and specifically ethics in and around the history of what Oppenheimer's invention or Oppenheimer's experiments discovered for science and humanity. Tonight is a more traditional movie discussion. We're doing a vibe check with the movie Oppenheimer, which means I'm joined by my awesome friend Dan from Comic Chop News.
Hello, everybody. It feels like it's only been about 2 weeks since the last time we did it, and the movies are just as bleak.
It's the state of affairs maybe in the world right now that we're picking some pretty heavy movies, but it's also the state of Oppenheimer. I think as a film is pretty weighty.
It's a feel-good movie
about nuclear holocaust.
A little obsession, detachment,
right?
A little bit of communism. It's got a little bit of everything,
right?
It's got some romance.
So for those that haven't seen any of our vibe check shows, this is when Dan and I get together. We pick a sort of a topic film, and then we sort of spiral off of it to films that feel to at least us having a similar vibe that seem to click in some way with the movie at hand. So tonight we're talking about Oppenheimer. We should be joined by my friend Carlito Classico as well. And the links for Dan and Carlito are all down below in the description. So you can find these awesome friends in the community as well. So first, I guess I really want to know, Dan, what did you think of Oppenheimer? What are your thoughts about the film?
So I first saw it in the theaters, and I remember I had one little issue.
Okay. Just one.
The mix in the theater was so fucking loud, I couldn't hear dialogue. It was drowning it out. So this time I watched it, and I decided to not turn on my 7.1 Atmos in the house and just watch it in a more natural environment. I turned off all of my devices so there'd be no distractions, and I watched it. First thing that, honestly, it's like the last thing you'd think would occur to most people. The sound engineering and choices they made in this movie are just chef's kiss. It's brilliant. They made choices in here that I think would go against the grain in most movies. Choosing to have like a large rumbling undertone, almost showing Oppenheimer's anxiety. There is another gripe I have in here that some people might not have. The Florence Pugh parts are borderline porn, and they're prolonged. It's too long.
Unnecessarily long.
Yes.
There's some good people in the chat. I forgot to say hello to everybody, but we had Las Cruces saying hello from New Mexico. Good to see you,
Not Los Alamos?
Hopefully not. Magic Lasso Ryan in the chat. What's going on, Ryan? Good to see you, sir. And then, of course, we've got Gore Vidal himself. Ooh. What is going on, Gore? I hope you're doing all right. He says he agrees about the film in the theater, one of the loudest movies he's ever sat through. So, yeah, I definitely can agree with both of those frustrations. Overall, high on the Nolan list, low, middle, average. What are your thoughts here?
I think it's probably top 3.
Ooh. Wow.
Because the subject matter is so good. And this is a who's who of actors that you haven't seen. And I'm just going to say it. Probably the best Robert Downey Jr. role of the past 30 years. He is strong. He's strong in this. He's incredibly strong playing an asshole.
Right.
But it's such a good role. And was it Tom Conti playing Einstein?
Yeah.
Crazy. Right. Josh Hartnett almost looked like a young Matt Damon in this.
I had real hard time believing Josh Hartnett as a nuclear physicist, but maybe that's just because I've seen him act before.
And Rami Malek is indescribable in this because he, with the makeup and the black and white and everything, was very hard to know that was Rami Malek.
He says he's 30 miles away from White Sands. There you go. What is up, Matt? Comics by the Bay says every actor was strong in this movie.
David Dastmalchian was in it,
Yep.
who I feel is a very good character actor, where he can disappear into the background.
Yep.
Also, Alden Ehrenreich playing the assistant, the aide,
Right.
Mr. Young Han Solo.
Yeah. Right.
Strong. Like, no, he was strong in that role. Like, this was like a tour de force by a lot of actors. I think Jason Clarke is at his strongest when he's playing kind of like the military asshole. Zero Dark 30, probably the best role I've seen him in. He was great in that.
Sure. Well, okay. For me, I'm probably going to put this in the bottom 3 for me, my Nolan picks. I felt like it was, like you mentioned, overlong in those nudity scenes. I think it's overlong just period. I don't know that it needs the 3-hour treatment for this story. I think it's definitely confused as to what it's trying to say. And I feel like the little tacked on, oh, by the way, nuclear holocaust is bad ending thing felt cheap to me. So for me, I didn't hate it or by any means. I just didn't like it a whole lot.
I think what I like about it is, one, the subject matter, because Oppenheimer is kind of one of those lost characters in history
Figures,
to a certain
right?
degree.
Yeah.
And at least they go into how conflicted he was, that he realized what he was doing, how misguided he was to a certain degree, and then trying to correct course afterward, and how basically they tried to bury him afterward.
Which for me would have worked if the nuclear bomb would have happened in the middle of the movie. And then the second half would have been about the journey. But they give us like 10 minutes of remorse. It feels like
It
it's
was a
very
lot
short.
of build up to the bomb.
So for me, I feel like it showed very little remorse. Even if it historically there was remorse, the film didn't give us that. And what it really did at the end was just say, hey, look, scientists, we spent 3 hours or 2.5 hours telling you how bad scientists are when they're just run amok. But you know who's worse? Politicians. And that was basically the whole point of the movie. Like, I didn't feel like it had much more to say than that. And it really just tried to tack on a deeper meaning at the end. And for me, it just didn't work.
Shot incredibly well.
Photography, cinematography, very strong.
Although I will say, Nolan went back to the Prestige thing, where going back to the beginning at the end.
Well, he's kind of
Einstein
always
discussion.
I feel like he's done it in almost every movie he's ever made at this point. Let me get you back from the beginning to the end, and the end back to the beginning, and the last moments of every one of his movies almost always harken back to the beginning of the movie.
I did like that people started to see on a bigger stage how good Cillian Murphy is.
I mean, he is pretty astounding in everything, but yeah.
Because he's always kind of been a background character. He's not been the main star a lot, except on like cable TV.
Oh yeah, whatever. Blinders, Peaky Blinders.
Peaky Blinders, yeah. He's not really been. It's kind of like the same way I'm with like James McAvoy, where Hollywood tried to make him a star and it never happened. But he's very good at what he does.
Sure. What is up? Aggressively relaxing. Hello, and thank you for coming by. Yeah, I do agree that there are some phenomenal performers and some great performances in the movie, for sure. But it's possible also that the reason I would rank it so low on Nolan's scale is I like so many others of his movies. Batman Begins, Dark Knight, Inception, Prestige, Memento, even Insomnia, I like a whole heck of a lot. So a lot of that stuff I love.
I'd say there's easily 45 minutes I could cut out of this movie.
Totally.
So when he's a student, I dug that stuff, especially when he tried to poison his professor.
Which, is that true? Like, that feels like something that would be impossible to prove or disprove.
I don't know.
So for me, it felt like cheap movie making, because how do you verify something like that?
like the whole Soviet party communist thing, if you cut all those parties out of it, I wouldn't miss anything.
I think they kind of had to show why he was on
Yeah,
the rails or whatever.
some of it went a little too long.
Yeah.
But like once they start getting to Los Alamos and everything ramping up to the bomb and the bomb dropping the test, phenomenal scene, phenomenal
Sure.
sound engineering, everything leading up to it. Matt Damon, shockingly good.
You don't like Matt Damon?
So I found this out when I was looking through. I was doing facts on this movie.
Okay.
He was in therapy with his wife, and she convinced him to stop acting so they could work on their marriage. He had a hall pass, something that he didn't think would ever happen. He said, well, if Christopher Nolan asks me to be in a movie, I'm going to have to do it. Much to his wife's anger,
yeah.
Christopher Nolan goes, hey, I have a role for you in this movie. And Matt Damon's like, hall pass. Gotta go.
Yep.
So that was one of the weird things of the movie. Like, he was out of acting, basically, to work on his marriage. And then that came along. And Matt Damon, I think since The Martian, he's taking his craft a little bit more serious. And even a little bit before that, he's been in movies, but there was like a whole schlock era of Matt Damon of him not saying no to any projects.
He's definitely had some movies that I didn't care for, but I feel like in general, I've always been very impressed by him. I even enjoyed all the Bourne movies.
Oh no, those are fun, but there's in particular, what was the one with
We Bought a Zoo?
Oh well, yeah, the tiny house one or whatever.
Oh yeah,
Shrinking.
I never saw that one.
The Incredible Mr. Ripley was another one that like
I love Talented Mr. Ripley. I think that movie is fantastic.
I didn't love it, and I just remember it was so there was that Jude Law like era where he would just started showing up in everything.
Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow.
Gattaca, like
I love Gattaca.
No, Gattaca was good, but there was like a string of movies real close together that was like
Gotcha. The
only thing I think was closer to that was who was the guy who was in Clash of the Titans that they felt like they were trying to shove down our throats?
Harry Hamlin?
No. The remake.
Oh, the remake. I never saw the remake. Oh, it was but I know I think I know who that was.
He's an Australian actor, and
wasn't it the guy in Avatar?
Yes.
Sam something?
Sam Worthington. They were shoving him down our throat, and they want him to be a star. And I can say the same thing. Clive Owen was another one that they were trying so hard to make happen. It turns out Clive Owen's a good actor, but he's not a leading man who's going to be a huge star.
Maybe. Gore says it did actually happen that Oppenheimer attempted to poison his teacher. His father negotiated a deal so he wouldn't be expelled. How do you prove that? I guess there must have been records of it in his school. But
or he put it in his bio.
Maybe.
The American Prometheus.
Right.
So
okay.
This movie had $100 million budget.
Wait, Oppenheimer only has $100 million budget?
Its production budget was $100 million.
Wow. It seems like a lot more than that.
Opening weekend did $82.5 million. Oh, just opening weekend, which almost made back its budget.
Right.
Although that's not counting the marketing, which is usually crazy.
It just passed $1 billion though, didn't it, recently?
So all-time domestic box office, it did 329 domestically.
Okay.
634 international. So
there you go. Just right at I think I thought I had read it just past $1 billion, but it must be right near it.
So I kind of found that interesting. Cillian Murphy basically was the only choice.
It was written for him, I guess. Yeah.
And weirdly, he studied Oppenheimer's life and was inspired by David Bowie, weirdly. So he tried to get his body to look like David Bowie, like that gaunt look.
Yeah.
They don't say how much weight he lost for it, but apparently he lost a lot.
Huh.
Robert Downey Jr., Emily Blunt, and Matt Damon had no idea what they signed up for. They were never told what they were going to be playing.
That's hilarious.
They took massive pay cuts, each earning $4 million in lieu of the 10 to 20 million upfront they normally would get.
They would normally, yeah.
So I thought that was actually, actually, I think Emily Blunt kind of gets overlooked for her performance because
she's very good.
Oh, she's good. She's really, really good.
I agree completely. Did you know I learned that this movie was written in first person? The screenplay was written in first person, meaning the portions of the screenplay that were describing the actions of the characters would say, I went over and I picked up this pen and I did this thing. You know what I'm saying? Instead of saying Oppenheimer opens the book and turns to page 7, it would say I opened the book and turned to page 7. Does that make sense? Which, that's what Christopher Nolan said. He wanted to really get the reader into the mind of Oppenheimer when they read the script. And so the entire screenplay was written in first person, which I've never heard of a screenwriter doing that before, which I found very interesting.
So the actor who played Edward Teller was actually writer-director Benny Safdie, which, funny enough, he was told Paul Thomas Anderson actually recommended him because Christopher Nolan found out from Paul Thomas Anderson that Safdie actually used to be a roommate with a physicist in college.
Curious.
Yeah, at Columbia University. So I thought it was interesting. And then this is the first movie without Michael Caine since Insomnia.
Okay, gotcha.
Because Michael Caine
is in basically everything he's ever done.
Yeah, well, no, he retired shortly before this.
Right. Well, and even in was it Dunkirk? It was just his voice, right, on the radio. On the radio.
I would have loved to see Michael Caine in this type of movie.
I mean, he could have done a lot of parts, that's for sure.
Yes. So I remember when this came out, my Nolan movies always kind of shift because I know Carlito gets mad every time I say I think The Prestige probably is my number one, if not like
it's top 3 for me.
Inception might be my number one. Those two shift because every time I see The Prestige, I notice something. There's something that I will see. I didn't love Tenet as much as he did, but I love Dunkirk.
Yeah. I mean, I like Tenet a lot, but I needed to watch it several times to feel like I really understood it. And every time I've watched it, I feel better about it, and I enjoy it more. But it's always going to be Memento and Prestige, I think, in the top 2. I do think Batman Begins is very underappreciated, and
I have that above Dark Knight.
Dark Knight, I think, is just as good. I feel like they're both right there neck and neck for me, and I think they're all
get rid of that last half hour, and I think Dark Knight is perfect.
I'm willing to accept it for those flaws.
But again, your main actor dies, you're kind of...
Yeah, I mean, that happened. I think that's more the reason why Rises sucks than anything else. But all of those movies that we've listed now, I like more than this one. I just feel like they all have a lot more substance to them. Fake news. Where are you? Get your butt in here. He says, I never get mad at anyone's Nolan list. It's the best kind of list.
All right, you question my choices. Let me put it that way.
I do admit I want to watch Oppenheimer again. I'll watch it with my wife again at some point, but I can't imagine it rocketing very high on my... It's definitely going to sit near the bottom for me. Thought Oppenheimer was a brilliant critique on modern filmmaking, having him deliver his most infamous line in another context like it's a Star Wars movie, or Nolan was bored and made a bad movie. Okay, interesting.
It's not a bad movie. And again, like, as much as I dislike Interstellar, it's not a bad movie. It's just, it's not for me.
It's funny because that's my brother's favorite, and I know a lot of people that put Interstellar at the top. But it is lower on my list as well. I think Interstellar and Oppenheimer would be towards the bottom.
Well, overall. I remember the Batman show we did on the Batman.
Rises, by the way, is always going to be last, probably.
The rankings, when I said Batman Begins, I had above Dark Knight. Everybody just shot me looks, and I'm like, Begins doesn't work. And again, Michael Caine is so good as Alfred in that series. You can forget about anything. Michael Caine is great, and honestly, Jeremy Irons was good in the Zack Snyder ones. Like Jeremy Irons was good because he's a smart ass.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm digging deep for a positive.
I like that you do that. Well, Don Gustavo's in the chat. He said it would be cool if Oppenheimer told Godzilla, "I'm your father." See, I think that is true of a lot of people. I know a lot of people that feel that way. Carlito, definitely. It's just not. It doesn't work for me the same way. I think it has bigger plot holes for me that I have trouble overlooking and stuff that doesn't quite add up. And speaking of Matt Damon bad acting, I can't stand him in Interstellar. Not just because his character is an antagonist, but he's so badly written. He is so badly acted. He is so poorly done. But anyways, we're not on Interstellar.
Insomnia is criminally underrated, I think.
It is. I do think it's a very tight thriller.
It's overlooked
really well. It's got 3 great performances, obviously Williams and Pacino, but then you throw in Hilary Swank, really great.
Yeah, I know Carlito and we did Dunkirk, and after rewatching it, we're like, why do people not talk about this movie? Like the sound design, everything is brilliant, except that it was a war movie, and we've been talking about war for years.
Here's why I think it's overlooked. Nolan can't get out of his own way about chopping up a movie and futzing around with the storytelling linear stuff. And I find no point to the function of chopping up Dunkirk and putting it out of order. Does it work? I mean, yeah, I guess. Is it often confusing and feels unnecessary? Yes. Would the movie be just as tense and just as powerful in chronological order? Yes. I feel like it serves no function to reverse it or flip it all around. And that becomes people just feeling like, oh, it's just Nolan doing Nolan crap. Like it doesn't feel functional, you know? What is up, Cantonese kid, my man Jeff?
What's up, man?
What's happening?
Sorry I missed you at MegaCon, brother.
Maybe. And we got 90 miles from comics. What's going on, Chad? He says Dunkirk's incredible, criminally underrated. Good to have you in the chat, my man. We're just discussing Oppenheimer, maybe where it fits, before we start looking at movies that vibe with Oppenheimer.
And again, like Oppenheimer, like easily, I think 30 to 45 minutes could have been cut from it in different spaces.
Absolutely.
I didn't think the pacing was horrible. Like there's maybe 2 times in the movie I sat there and started looking at my watch, which usually for me is not the greatest thing to have. Like
for me, it was like almost every scene. I was at the end of every scene going like, this scene felt like it ended like 30 seconds ago. And that was a constant for me where I was just looking at it as like, why does that scene go on so long? Why is this so much longer than it just felt unnecessary?
I could have gone with if you cut out some of the traveling around stuff and just had more of the trials. Because I honestly was more gripped when they were having the trying to confirm Robert Downey Jr.'s character when he's getting pissed because he doesn't know who's coming, what scientists, because they're not telling him.
Right.
And then at the end with Alden Ehrenreich's like telling him, he's like, well, maybe they just don't like you.
So, I mean, I'm trying to remember other films by Nolan that I dislike, because it really is, for me, Rises is near the very bottom. And then for me, Interstellar and Oppenheimer would be down there. I don't remember if there's any other ones that I strongly dislike. Rises is the bottom. I think it'll always be. I just think it has so many. It's like a basketball with pinholes in it. It's just constantly deflating. It never rises to complete readiness.
Memento is a movie that hasn't aged well for me.
Ooh, wow, really? Okay, tell me.
So once you know the twist, you're never going to catch that same high from watching it the first time, if that makes sense.
I can understand that.
There's a couple of movies like that where once you know the twist, you watch it the next time, and then you start focusing on where were they showing the twist before that.
Right. I will say for me, Memento is the one I've probably watched the most, which I guess would defy that treatise a little bit in the sense that I've really enjoyed watching it again and again. And I've even, like I mentioned, watched it in chronological order, which is an option on one of the DVDs that I've got, where you can push in a code and play the movie chronologically. And it still worked for me in that way. What I think the editing adds is this element of being in his life and feeling this flaw in his brain. So I really thought that was well handled. And so for me, that one holds up in that regard. And I watched it not too long ago because I watched it with Charlie so she could see it. She was into it. But it's also like heavy, like all of these movies are, and carries a lot of heavy weight. I had a great WonderCon, Don. Thank you for asking. I'm just starting to post some things on Instagram. I'll post a lot more over the next week for sure. Chad loves the Memento. He's having it. John again with more holes.
But then again, there's like Silence of the Lambs or Manhunter, where I can watch a million times. I know what happens.
Right.
I did watch Red Dragon.
I've yet to see that. Which the Ed Norton movie. God, that movie's so awful.
It's weird how you can take the same story and make it inferior. And that's not a shot at Ed Norton. I think Ed Norton's a brilliant fucking actor, but like, what the fuck happened?
For me, it's an perfect example of watching an actor get worse at playing a character over time. It's like Hopkins had something and then he kind of lost it and then he had no idea where it went. And by the time he got to the third time playing this part, he was so unable to control himself.
I watched Hannibal recently also because I just wanted to torture myself.
Sure.
I might as well have been that guy in the Da Vinci Code, just smacking myself with the
self-flagellation. Yeah.
Yes, just why? Why am I doing this?
I think it's his name. Yeah.
Oh God, that was
Looks like Gore is agreeing with you. He says he might feel the same way watching Memento all those years later. And Jeff, I did meet Rach. I think it's Raichi or Raichi. She, because her booth she was sharing
by Raichi.
Yes, she was sharing her booth with Sozo Maika, the cover artist, and so I kept going to her booth to get stuff signed by Sozo. So I got, let's see what I know. I got a couple here. Where are they? Yeah. I got this second print of Catwoman signed with a fun, pretty pink signature. And then I got this Power Girl signed with a yellow sig. Really, really great lady. A little shy, not super comfortable with big crowds, but Sozo was very friendly. But yes, I did meet her. So now I know who you're talking about when you tag me in those videos.
I also, to go off topic about something, I'm really angry at comic book CBR.
What's that?
They posted CBR.
Comic book review or whatever. Comic book report.
They posted just full blown spoiler. I hadn't gotten to read Fall of X yet for this
new issue,
and they flat out say what happened at the end of the issue. No spoiler, no tap on this to find out what happens. Full on just show it in the picture.
Did you leave a comment to curse them out?
I did.
Nice. Hopefully you included the words, I think I'm going to have to unfollow you.
No, it was more like, guys, not everybody reads their fucking comics day one.
Yeah. I still haven't read any from this last week. I've been so busy prepping for this con and everything.
It angered me because it's something I would have liked to have read myself.
Sure.
Not just see this image of it happening.
Right. No, that's totally understandable. Carlito says he wants to meet Snarky J cosplay, which I don't know who that is. I'll have to look him or her up. I'm not sure what J. I'm assuming J is a woman.
Probably.
So let's get a little into some vibe checking. Each of us, meaning myself and Dan and Carlito, chose a movie that we felt in one way or another connected, vibed with Oppenheimer. I picked The Social Network by David Fincher. You picked, is it Damien Chazelle?
Damien Chazelle, his follow-up to La La Land, Whiplash, which
with Miles Teller and
J.K. Simmons and Paul Reiser.
So I think it's funny. All three of our films, meaning Oppenheimer and these two, definitely downers. Not so happy endings. Versus, it's interesting that our man Carlito picked Lincoln, which seems to have a happier ending. But all of them very interesting looks at characters with real flaws pushing a real hardcore agenda, right?
So the thing that I gripped onto when we were saying the vibe was obsession.
Okay.
Like relentless obsession. And I feel that was something Oppenheimer was relentlessly obsessed with this idea to the point of, fuck everything and everyone in my way,
Right.
Giving away his kid at one point because it was a distraction.
Yeah. And in that way, I almost went with like something like There Will Be Blood, which seems to have a similar. I thought about There Will Be Blood, but
so for
me, obsession fit better for Mark Zuckerberg and his sort of need to control this thing, even though he didn't, much like Oppenheimer, completely own it. He had other people responsible for what it was becoming. He definitely felt like it was his. And then at some point, I think might later in life realize that he did create something of a monster and drop a bomb on all of us.
So the other thing in my head was the trial aspect,
courtroom drama,
and real late in the game. You had already made the thumbnail, and like I was just happened to be sitting here late one night, and I was like, "Fuck! I should have picked 8 Men Out."
Oh, sure.
And that's an interesting historical drama, I guess, sort of, to a degree, but it really happened.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And characters that made a huge mistake and basically paid the rest of their lives for it and were dealing with it, the ramifications. I haven't seen that. That's a John Sayles film, right? I haven't seen that in a long time.
Even the one who didn't actually take money or cheat was blackballed. With Shoeless Joe Jackson, which we see at the end is, playing some mom and pop league.
Which can't be proven, but definitely was good cinematic
storytelling. Oh, it's a great movie. It's actually getting put out in Blu-ray at the end of the month.
Oh, is it?
Yes, for the whopping $15 with digital.
I haven't seen it in a very long time.
You haven't watched 8 Men Out and you like baseball or baseball history, Charlie Sheen doesn't suck in it.
I always think of it as a John Cusack movie personally.
Sorry, not Charlie Sheen. John Cusack. Sorry.
There you go.
Major League's coming out this month, and I have the 4K ordered, so that's on my brain.
Did Oppenheimer turn code against Deutschland? I mean, I feel like he definitely did. I don't know that there's another way for that. Lincoln had a similar obsession with something called the Union. Instead of allowing the states to secede, he said no in order to preserve the United States. Yeah. And his obsession with the Emancipation Proclamation being solved by this amendment, right? Definitely part of it, right?
The Fuhrer had Heisenberg, Don Gustavo.
Yes. Yeah, he was definitely working with his own scientists, right?
Not making blue glass, crystal meth, but close.
So for Whiplash, you had said something about how rewatching it made you feel, and I had joked that like I had promised myself I would never rewatch Whiplash. What were your emotions rewatching it?
Okay, so when you first watch Whiplash, it's a fucking intense movie.
Yes.
It moves insanely quicker than you'd think because the movie was over real fast. The pacing is breakneck in it.
Yep.
There's very little fluff in it. So in the first 5 minutes of the movie, you're introduced to Terrence Fletcher, J.K. Simmons.
Yeah.
And they're setting the table of what that relationship is going to be.
Yes.
So my first time watching it, I remember feeling dirty after watching it. It was a good movie. It was a very good movie. But you watch it, and I think we've all had that movie of, oof, I got to think about this for a while.
Sure. It definitely stuck with me.
And you have to digest it. And I have not watched it again since that first time watching it.
Me neither.
But there's something with that movie that just sticks with me. It sticks in my brain. And there is a scene in here, in this movie, it's in a jazz club. And this is further into Miles Teller, Andrew Neiman's relationship with J.K. Simmons' character of Terrence Fletcher. And Terrence Fletcher has been expelled from the music academy as a teacher. And he starts going in about Charlie Parker. How if his teacher had never thrown a cymbal at his head, we might not have ever had Bird or Charlie Parker. And he starts talking about how that's a fucking crime. And you're listening to him, and he starts ripping on Starbucks jazz CDs that they sell and how they're crap. And then he goes, there's 2 words in the English language that are the most dangerous that can you ever tell somebody. Good job. And he said they're the 2 most harmful words you can ever tell somebody. And it's the biggest entrance into his thinking and his brain.
Right. Because there's so many times I feel like in the movie when his character is being manipulative and lying, and when he says stuff and he acts a certain way, it's a performance that the character is intentionally giving to try to elicit some kind of a response. But in that moment, I feel like he's actually being honest.
That's the most, but it's also manipulation because
he is still manipulating. He's always manipulating, but that felt at least the truest to his actual worldview.
And so Terrence Fletcher, his thing is Andrew Neiman's obsessed with being this great drummer. He has aspirations. And he might even be cocky to a degree. He gets plucked out of the novice class and gets brought into Terrence Fletcher's jazz class, which is, the prestigious position. And he just gets ripped apart. He's asked to start playing. And this is after Fletcher's out there going, yeah, just have fun. Just let it go. He's talking him up.
Right.
And then he has him start playing, and Fletcher's always wearing this very form-fitting, muscular black shirt.
Yep.
There's no facial hair, no head hair. Everything is always perfect about him. Black shoes, black pants, coat. And he's telling him, he's like, try it again. Not quite my tempo. Not quite my... And then it starts becoming more aggressive. And he's like, were you rushing or are you dragging? And he starts having him say 1, 2, and he's smacking him in the face. And he's like, why are you rushing? He's like, I don't know. And then it's almost like out of An Officer and a Gentleman with the departed Louis Gossett Jr. where Richard Gere's like, I got nowhere else to go. He's like, go back to home with your whore-loving daddy. And he asks him these personal facts about his family. And he starts making comments about how his mother left him in the crib. And you start realizing he doesn't think that he can make someone naturally become great. He has to destroy them and then rebuild them. And the way he fucking does it, it's cringy. There is this kid who's not even out of tune that he just starts like yelling at. He's like, what are you looking down at? Is there a Mars bar on the ground?
He eviscerates them.
Carrying you, and it just keeps going. And you as an audience just sit there like you're in that room.
You feel like Miles Teller.
And it gets to a certain point, Miles Teller breaks up with Supergirl, Melissa Benoist, who's in it, and he tells her that basically he has to break up with her because she's ruining him musically.
Yeah.
His dedication. He's drumming all night, and his hands are bleeding to basically satisfy this guy who's never going to be satisfied with anything he does. He gets into a car wreck, and he's so obsessed he drags himself to this recital and gets eviscerated by him and ends up snapping and attacking him.
Yeah.
And we find out that one of Fletcher's former students hung himself after Fletcher gives a speech about how he got into a car wreck.
Yep.
No, he killed himself. And it's weird because this guy must know he's a monster. But he's justifying what he's doing because he thinks that he's good. So he's almost manipulating himself into convincing himself what he's doing is right because this one time in history,
correct,
Charlie Parker got a symbol thrown at his head and it made him great.
And that was the thing, right? That was the catalyst in his mind, right? Lots of great comments in the chat here. Aggressively saying so much wasted talent on making something so depressing. And it was a new way to look at J. Jonah Jameson. I wish I was dedicated enough as a parent to horribly be abusive to my children and ever to make them Tiger Woods. What could I teach them to do? Knitting. Aggressively said. Ryan says vacuum cleaning. Gustavo says, well, J. Jonah only wants the best for his newspaper also.
Pictures of Spider-Man.
Here's a question for you to ponder for a second, maybe. Because when you picked this, in my head, I'm like, okay, how does Dan feel that this relates to Oppenheimer? Does he view Oppenheimer as Miles Teller, this young person with talent who can do something that other people can do before him, but maybe he can build on and try to do better, and he's being manipulated by a really sinister system, Robert Downey Jr. Or is Miles Teller supposed to be Albert Einstein? And Albert, he's got talent, he's got this idea, but somebody else is manipulating that idea and twisting that idea and subverting and distorting that idea to create a bomb. And is Miles Teller Oppenheimer, or is J. Jonah Jameson, whatever his name, I can't remember that actor's name.
J.K. Simmons. So J.K. Simmons, I would say,
in your mind, which one do you feel like?
J.K. Simmons would be Robert Downey Jr. because he's using Miles Teller and also trying to destroy him when it doesn't suit him. Because at a certain point, he tries to destroy Miles Teller because he didn't see the promise in him anymore.
And maybe that's the reason I don't like Oppenheimer, is I feel like they convince me for two-thirds of that movie that Oppenheimer is the villain. And I agree. And they get to the end and they try to tell me, no. Actually, Robert Downey Jr. is the villain. And I'm like, that's bullshit. Robert Downey Jr. sucks and I don't like him and he's a bad guy, but Oppenheimer is the villain. Oppenheimer's the
I think Oppenheimer would even call himself the villain because, I mean, the minute he drops that bomb, he starts reciting the Bhagavad Gita where he's like, I have become death.
Which is why I feel like the movie doesn't work, because Downey Jr. is like shoved in at the end to be like, no. See, he's so much worse than Oppenheimer. And I'm like, yeah, he's foul and awful. But you're trying to now like shade Oppenheimer in as something different and twist your entire narrative up to this point into something different. And it doesn't work for me.
So
Gore says, I don't see Oppenheimer as the villain in the film. I have a hard time not seeing him as the villain in that film. He is.
To be fair, he used the government to finance his
project.
His project, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just that was where I was struggling with the film, is because it felt like it was telling me one thing for 2/3 of the movie and then tried to trick me into thinking something different in the last third, and I wasn't buying it.
So
and that's why I liked the comparison to Whiplash, because you have two characters that you could easily decide which would be Oppenheimer, and maybe Oppenheimer's a bit of both. Maybe that's the reality.
I could say Miles Teller is not even the hero in this because he's morally gray.
At the end, very clearly, right? When he makes a decision very clearly to follow this teacher.
So they have that scene at the jazz club. And I would even say that Miles Teller, even when he takes out Melissa Benoist on the date, it's all about him. He takes her to a jazz pizza joint.
Yeah.
And he even with that, he even starts like kind of down talking her going to Fordham. So like he's not a great guy.
No, I think he's clearly so internally flawed that he is latching on to JK's character as like if he
a father figure.
As something that will ground his life and give it direction and meaning.
Well, they have that dinner scene with his family where they're all not talking up what he's doing. It's all about the athletics.
Right.
And then he's kind of like, well, I'm in the prestigious, and they're like, yeah, whatever. Like, you know, Paul Reiser's just along for the ride at this point. He's just there. But so he is invited to be the drummer in this I forget what kind of jazz event it is, but it's J.K. Simmons' band.
Yeah.
And they're getting ready to start. He goes, I know it was you who also gave in to get me fired right before they start. And he picks a song that he's never played. He doesn't know. So he set him up to fail. His family's there. They're watching him fail. And you see in his head the facial expressions of, he fucked me. I'm done.
Oh, hold on. Wait, Carlito's here now.
Oh.
What's up, big guy?
What's up?
Nice jabroni shirt. I like it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So Dan's talking about the finale of Whiplash, where Miles Teller's character ultimately is forced to deal with the big finale, the big test, ultimately the final test that this teacher is really giving him.
I would also say this is the point where he finally mentally breaks.
Oh, absolutely.
Because this is basically his suicide. He walks back out, and J.K. Simmons is having a high old time on the mic. And Miles Teller just gets on the drums and starts playing. And J.K. Simmons is like, what the fuck are you doing? And he turns to the guy on the big standing bass, and he goes, just on my tempo, I'll play you in. And J.K. Simmons is just kind of sitting there like staring at him like, all right, what the fuck? And they start playing the song Caravan that they've been talking about for almost 40 minutes. And there's a part where J.K. Simmons walks up and he's like, I'm going to gouge your fucking eyes out.
It's right in his face, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And he hits the cymbal so it flips enough, almost hit him in the face. And there's that moment where he's playing and J.K. Simmons is staring at him. He's like, fuck, it happened. Even he's having disbelief. And you go into that long solo.
Yeah.
And that's where J.K. Simmons goes right up to the drum and he's doing the quiet down. He starts like coaching the.
Yeah.
And they start staring at each other. And there's a certain point where it almost looks like J.K. Simmons' mouth's good job. But it's not. It was basically to stop. And people at the end say it's a happy ending I'm like, it's not.
Oh my God.
It's not a fucking happy ending.
It's the ending where Luke goes to the dark side of if you change the end of Return of the Jedi.
So they think that it's a happy ending because Miles Teller gets this weird smile on his face, but it's not the smile of winning. It's because he finally got this acceptance from this fucking lunatic.
It's because his whole college career or whatever has been built around satisfying this horrible monster, and we've been hoping that he will break free of this monster and be his own person, but what we see is somebody who absolutely can't and gives into it completely.
J.K. Simmons, actually, the villain wins.
Yes.
He proved that he was right.
Yes.
And then it just fades to black.
Yeah.
And that's the ending, with them staring at each other and this weird thing of approval. And it's an ending where if you're not paying attention, you think it's happening. That's what makes me feel dirty, because the villain won. There is a channel called The Vile Eye.
Okay.
That they have these profiles called Analyzing Evil. And they do one for Terrence Fletcher and break down all his manipulations throughout the entire movie and the way he gaslights people. And you don't think about him as an evil character until you sit down. You're like,
I thought about him as an evil character from the second he came on screen. He was a villain to me.
So interestingly enough, this movie was based off of Damien Chazelle's own life. He was in a competitive jazz conservatory.
So I have the same problem with Oppenheimer that I do with Whiplash, which means you picked a very good vibe check for this movie.
Also, one of the factoids I learned, this was Miles Teller playing the drums throughout the whole movie.
He actually did it himself?
Self-taught at 15.
Wow.
So that was one of the interesting things to learn about that. And J.K. Simmons was as sweet as can be until it started the filming.
Until action, yeah.
And he said that he felt it was nightmarish for him to keep being in character like that.
Yeah, for J.K.
Yes.
Here's my problem with the movie. It feels like Damien Chazelle agrees with J.K. Simmons' character's thesis statement, and that he makes a film to support it. And that's my fundamentally, I feel like the film doesn't understand its own point. In the same way that I feel like Oppenheimer doesn't really understand what it's trying to say and gets lost in the last act, focusing in on Robert Downey Jr.'s character.
Interesting follow-up to La La Land, though, no?
Right?
Happy-go-lucky La La Land.
As a parent and a teacher, as I look at J.K. Simmons' character, it is fundamentally stupid to believe the only way to create talent is to beat it into submission in a person. It just isn't. It has been proven throughout history, time and again, that that's not it. That there's just trillions of examples of amazing people who did great things who were not traumatized to make it happen. So this bizarre thesis statement that great art only happens through pain is stupid to me. And I feel like to reinforce it with an entire film promoting it is idiotic. And so it's painful as a parent and a teacher to watch this movie. Like I watched the whole time going, you're wrong. The whole thesis statement you're making is stupid. Just because it happened one time or two times with these random examples you want to give. What about all the times it didn't happen? What about all the great artists we've had, musicians, whatever, that weren't traumatized by somebody in their lives? You're going to ignore all of them and just say, yeah, those are the exceptions to the rule.
So this movie haunts me.
It should. It's a horror story.
It stays with me. And Carlito and I have talked about
like Les Cruces says, it's horrifying, but I guess in his words, awesome. I don't know that I would say it, but yes,
it's well shot. Like,
yeah,
the scenes are great. So there's a horror movie Carlito I had him watch called Martyrs. It's a French horror movie.
Okay,
I've watched it once. I can't watch it again. I cannot bring myself to watch it because literally it's been 5 years since I last watched it. I can't unsee or forget what happened in this movie. It's not a bad movie. It's just fucking haunting.
I'm still thinking about that movie. It's never left me.
So
And I
the-
have to disagree with you guys. Robert
Oh,
Downey
I'm-
Jr. was definitely the villain in Oppenheimer.
Oh no, I said
I'm
he was
with
the villain.
Gore on that.
I'm not saying he's not. I'm saying they wrote him in the last second to try to make Oppenheimer look good.
Well,
And
yeah, because
they
Oppenheimer is awesome.
and it undercuts the entire 2/3 of the movie they just got done telling us and showing us what an awful person Oppenheimer is. And then they're like, no, though he's not as bad as this guy.
Right.
And that's crappy writing in my
So,
opinion.
Carlito, I got to ask you, Cillian Murphy, like a supporting star, or do you think he's like a legit star? I feel like he's more of a supporting actor who sometimes gets leading roles.
So just in general, or what I think, or
Yeah,
or
like
what
what do you think? Like, is he in your eyes like a leading man, or do you think he's a better supporting actor?
I think he's a great leading man in TV, and I think he's a supporting actor for movies that can sometimes lead. That's what I think.
Given the right part or whatever.
Yeah, it all depends on the part, really.
Yeah, because the only ones I've seen him
Right.
leading in was 28 Weeks Later, or not 28 Weeks, 28 Days Later, and then
There's Stu.
Not quite
What's
my-
up, Stu?
not quite my tempo.
Oh,
But also Red Eye. He
yo,
was kind of this
Oh.
movie
he's
man.
horrible scary in that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
he was.
So anybody who has not watched Red Eye, one, Rachel McAdams is so
That's
unbelievably
Wes
cute.
Craven, right?
Wes Craven.
Mhm.
Wes Craven. It was one his. I'm trying to not be the Scream guy anymore, so I'm going to do all this other random shit.
I'm surprised that movie wasn't a bigger hit. It was a really good movie.
Yeah, it kind of flew under the radar. I mean, I didn't
It
even
very
see
much
it.
did.
Is that an airplane comment? Or red eye flew under the radar? I see what you're
But I'm
Carlito,
here all
we-
night, guys. Here all night.
we kicked this off by asking what were your thoughts of Oppenheimer and where would you rank it in the Nolan films?
I did hear some of that. Yeah.
Did you want to give us your 10-second take or whatever? Like how would you
Yeah.
rank it? What did you think of it?
Yeah. As far as a film, I mean, it's damn near perfect. I thought that goes, but it's a middle of the road, maybe even bottom tier Nolan for me though,
Okay.
which I think is credit to what kind of work he does. But
And that's kind of what I was saying to Dan as well, is I do hold a lot of his movies in high regard. And therefore it's going to be tricky for a film that I feel like has some fundamental flaws to make it
Yeah.
that high on the list.
yeah, I think I gave it a 4.9 out of 5, so I'm
Oof.
pretty high on
Very
it.
high.
Yeah,
Sorry,
there
Greg.
he is, bearded.
We'll get you in on one of these at some point, my brother.
We don't. He's not my vibe tempo. He's
Was-
not my
was-
tempo.
Was there an actor in this movie that kind of surprised you in Oppenheimer?
Well, there's so many good side supporting cast. I mean, geez, I really thought what the hell's her name? Gosh dang it.
Emily Blunt or
Yeah, Emily Blunt. I really
Emily
thought
Blunt, especially during that trial part, the
oh
the
man.
big
Tribunal.
speech. Yeah, she's got to make. Yeah.
Like she doesn't even say you. It's like what you talk about, Dan, with the acting in the eyes. Like you can see the pain and like the anger and the sadness and the frustration like on her face.
oh,
She doesn't even
especially
look
when that
sane.
one guy went to shake her hand and she just had her arms crossed and just glaring at him with
Yeah.
anger at the end.
Yeah,
Hmm.
So good.
for sure. And yeah. I know
thought
there was
Josh-
one
I
character
thought
that
Josh Hartnett was good.
yes, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I just can't get over it. He always just seems like an idiot to me. And I'm like, you make him a nuclear physicist. It's like
He's
it feels like a Bond, villain, a Bond woman moment where they give the girl with the big boobs the nuclear physicist part, and I'm just supposed to believe that she's this like.
Are you talking
genius.
about Christmas Jones?
Yes, I am. So I look at Josh Hartnett and the whole time I'm like, he is not a nuclear physicist. This guy does not know how to add. So that was a tough sell for me.
I thought there was one miscast in that movie. I don't know what you guys think, but I bet John probably knows who I'm thinking.
I was going to say Josh Hartnett. So I mean, I don't
Oh.
know who else I would say is
no
miscast.
Matt Damon.
Really? I didn't.
Yeah,
He liked Matt Damon in this.
I mean he wasn't bad. I don't know. It's something about Matt Damon that just takes it out every movie.
I mean, you easily could have swapped Jason Clarke into that role.
Oh yeah, for sure. I love him. He's awesome.
I thought Casey Affleck playing the
the military guy, the agent. Yeah.
I know what John really wanted. John wanted Giovanni Ribisi playing that role.
I'm not going to do the impression tonight.
Look at Bearded Man just slamming me.
Apparently, he was a hard teacher who could belittle his students. Okay, he's talking about Oppenheimer as a teacher.
Oh, yeah. I can only imagine.
He says he doesn't vibe check, so we can't be on the same show together. We'll make that happen. I'm sorry you lost your money. You should have gone to the movies instead. That's always what we're here.
I was trying to do my homework. We weren't letting me.
Oh, Bearded.
So then we jumped over to comparing it to Whiplash and talking a little bit about Dan's pick of Whiplash. And for me, there's definitely a lot that it connects to, and that I feel like there is some nice vibe checking going on.
Obsession
to with this obsession.
Yeah, that's what I focused on because Oppenheimer was obsessed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of went more historical with it, but because that's where my
well, why don't we talk a little bit about
vibe is kind of, but
yeah, you picked Lincoln. What were your feelings on this one? Because I made the comment at the beginning of the show that of all four of our movies, the only one that seems to actually have a genuinely like heroic character at its focus and a happy ending is Lincoln.
Which is yet another reason why I picked it, because I want to try to. Well, and honestly, when I was watching Oppenheimer in the theater, like the first movie that felt like it's like someone else had said, a lot of biographies, they basically give you like 75% of like of the person's upbringing, their life, blah blah blah.
Sure.
When you're only there for the 25% of his life you care about, which I thought was an interesting way of putting
pivotal stuff.
And for Oppenheimer, I felt like that nailed it, and Lincoln too. Like I think,
can I give a
it
quick
focuses on
Lincoln?
the most important.
Well, let me say hey to Scott from Hoarder's Hide. He said Whiplash was great, 2 Oscar-worthy performances. Social Network was kind of meh. Lincoln was a film was okay, but Luz was incredible. Haven't seen Oppenheimer yet.
And one of my friends. I'm going to cut off Dan, but
go ahead. Yeah,
one of my friends had said that like Daniel Day-Lewis wasn't really acting; he was basically Lincoln for the whole movie, and that's so true. That's a perfect summation right there. But
he turned it down originally.
Yeah.
So Spielberg went to Liam Neeson next. So in 2005, Liam Neeson was going to be. In July 2010, Neeson left the project saying that he'd grown too old for the part. So they ended up going with Daniel Day-Lewis.
They went back to Lewis, and he said yes the second time.
Also, Natasha Richardson had just passed in that accident.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Liam Neeson was married to. Spielberg and Neeson both Neeson and Leonardo DiCaprio both went to Daniel Day-Lewis to convince him to accept the role. So Leonardo DiCaprio weirdly had a part to be played in this. The young Adam Driver is in this movie.
He is. And so is we have several great actors, right? You mentioned at the top.
This is
James Spader.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yep.
Hal Holbrook.
Yeah, I can't remember how to pronounce. Is it Ken Oyelowo, the guy who played Martin Luther King in Selma? David Oyelowo.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Adam Driver. Asaluk Tukro. David Oyelowo.
He plays Martin Luther King in Selma. This is
Lucas Haas.
And he plays a
Forrest Gump's mom is in there. That's great.
Sally Field, yep.
Tommy Lee Jones, Lee Pace.
Oh yeah, Tommy Lee Jones.
The only thing,
Tommy Lee Jones Goggins. Part, yeah. Walter Goggins. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Justified.
Yep.
Walter Goggins.
I believe not from from Justified and also The Shield.
And he was also in the remake of Tomb Raider, which was great.
Jackie Earl Haley.
Gore says Oppenheimer admired Lincoln and understood why he couldn't initially make the Civil War about slavery because it would have alienated the neutral border states and turned them over to the secessionists.
Oh, that's a good point, Hoarder's Hut. I forgot about that. That Lewis didn't want to do Gangs of New York either.
As I understand it, he's one of those actors that has to be convinced to do any movie and never really wants to say yes to anything. So often needs like a lot of people to motivate him to do something, because it's so all-consuming in his way of doing it.
I remember seeing an interview after it came out. He, didn't do too much press, but there's a little bit, and he was talking about how his wife was so annoyed that he was like in character as Lincoln 24/7 for however long they shot it, and
yikes.
I don't know, it's kind of cool. But
so for you, what were some of the things that made this a vibe check for you, Carlito? Why pick this movie? What was it that drew you to it?
Well, for one, I hadn't seen it in probably a decade since it came out. And two, I just I have a fascination with historical figures, obviously, but I felt like, as Gore was saying, Oppenheimer kind of had a obsession, sort of, I guess, or not really, but an admiration of Lincoln, and I don't know, those two seem linked historically for what they did, and
people that were at different points.
Yeah, different points, and
were considered heroes, considered hated.
Yes,
back and forth on the spectrum.
Kind of the duality of
viewed through history in a lot of different lenses, right?
Right.
I can see that for sure. That's what I went in kind of feeling.
Yep.
But because it seems funny that like at the time, Lincoln was a very divisive leader. Yes. And Oppenheimer was a heroic figure. And then it seems like over time they've both flipped, right? Where Oppenheimer is sort of demonized and Lincoln is sort of become this hero figure.
Yeah. Yeah, you're more eloquent. That was exactly what I was thinking, but I couldn't
I found it a very interesting pick and mostly because I felt like it was the one that had the most positive to say. But then when I saw it as a sort of foil, a yin yang to Oppenheimer in a lot of ways, where it had a lot of the same elements and themes about politics and about government and about power and about rivalry and war time, but a different hero on the inverse journey, and they were sort of passing each other in the opposite direction. It was very interesting.
And I also think they were both kind of in their heads a lot,
right?
Obviously, but I think
all of these characters are very like head case characters,
of course.
Right? You look at J.K. Simmons and Miles Teller's characters in Whiplash,
especially Zuckerberg. But anyway,
I mean, absolutely.
Yeah. So, what was I gonna say? I forgot. That's all right. Probably wasn't important.
No, just about Lincoln versus Oppenheimer and some of the connectivity, the vibes that they share. Gore says,
"Oh yes, okay, thank you, Gore." God,
he says the casualties weighed on Lincoln. He would get the casualty list from both sides daily and felt responsible for the deaths because he wanted to preserve America, the United States. And obviously that the casualties weighed on Oppenheimer, right? Is that what you were thinking?
That, and also, I think they're both kind of opposite as far as like dealing with people, sort of. Oppenheimer is kind of colder, more. But whereas Lincoln, he could tell great story, and that's what one of the quotes I read in the book, which I'm sure Gore's read it, but it might have been that one they based the movie off of. But it was always said that like most people would look at Lincoln and not really, think too much of him, like when he was starting out and stuff. But then by the end of the night, like he could have the whole room thinking, he's the greatest storyteller and interested in him and behind him. And so
a great speaker too.
Yes,
like draw people in.
Great orator. Yeah.
Sorry, Dan, you look like you had something you wanted to say. Did we cut
another factoid, Dan?
No. I mean, other than this movie had an amazing opening weekend. $944 million opening weekend.
For Lincoln?
Oh, sorry, wrong.
That's got to be the total
number.
run.
No, opening weekend 944,000.
Oh, okay.
Budget was 65 million.
Just say it's almost 3-hour movie. I'm pretty sure.
All-time domestic 182 million. And then all-time international 91 million.
Oof, that's not very good.
Worldwide.
Well, it's not a movie that I would imagine plays well internationally. It's American
or
history.
In the theater, but
no, American history too. Like it's very distinctly U.S. the story.
Yeah.
But that was during that thing where Daniel Day-Lewis, I think, brought people to the theaters because whatever the movie was, you'd go see it. Just because you knew the performance was going to be great. I remember I didn't give a fuck about Gangs in New York, and then they were like, Daniel Day-Lewis is in this. So I was like, all right, like I'll go check it out.
You know what? I've still never seen that movie all the way through. Man. I every Scorsese movie is like nails on a chalkboard to me at this point. I struggle with his movies so badly. And then when you tell me it's 3+ hours long, and it's like, no, thank you.
You know, the more talking about this, like No Country for Old Men, I probably could have fit into this.
Oh God. You're gonna make me watch a lot. You know what I'm realizing? Maybe all these movies do vibe because I don't like all these movies.
And they're all super long too. Well, most of them are long.
I just want to make you do a coin flip.
Just
what if it's not? I don't have anything. You have everything to give. You just don't know it yet.
It's funny. It's funny, man.
Friendo.
Yep.
First time I saw that movie, I did not like it, and I hated the ending. I have a thing with Coen Brothers endings. Not a fan. But then I rewatched it again with my brother later, and was like, you know what? This is actually pretty awesome. But
I think it's much like Oppenheimer, like 2/3 a really great movie, and then it just the wheels come off, and they it feels like they lost the point they were trying to make. But maybe that's me.
Yes, Bearded, that's one thing we can actually agree on. Gangs of New York was great.
There's a movie I've been thinking about a lot lately, and maybe it's because it's not really out in physical that I can find anymore. Road to Perdition. That is a movie I have thought about.
Love that. That's one of my favorites.
Fucking great movie, and it's a ghost right now in physical.
Really?
Paul Newman's amazing in everything.
I own it.
I don't need to be sold on a Paul Newman movie ever.
It's so good. Tom Hanks, I think that's an underrated role that he's in.
Yeah, I just rewatched that.
It got shit on because it was based on a comic book.
You think that's why?
I didn't even know it was based on
it was
comic
so heavy
book
and it had such a downer ending.
I hate the ending. Really.
Yeah. Sorry, it's another movie that kind of stayed with me.
Sure.
History of Violence is another one that kind of stayed with me.
Well, let's not get too far off here.
Yeah,
I wanted
this ain't the train wreck. This is.
I wanted to get Dan's thoughts on Lincoln and how he feels it vibed with Oppenheimer for him.
Yeah.
So, funny story that we talked about before. I had every intention of watching this, and I missed it on Paramount Plus by a day because they took it off of it.
Damn
it! But you've seen it.
I saw it. I remember hating Sally Field in it when I watched it.
No, you just hate Mary Todd. You don't hate Sally Field.
No, Sally Field's performance was terrible. I really hated her performance. It just did not gel with me.
It wasn't that bad.
Again, it's been years since I last watched this. I do remember there being a lot of tribunal, political rallies and stuff that Lincoln was talking about in this.
Right.
I maybe I'm wrong. It's been so long since I watched this. The one thing, it's like Daniel Day-Lewis is great, and I feel like that's just kind of nonsense to say because he falls into his roles and he's kind of always great.
Bearded, I think you're thinking of Eastern Promises, which has the nude fight scene.
Yes, Eastern Promises is
History of Violence is the superior film of the two for me because History of Violence has a tighter narrative and 69. Road to Perdition is great. I do agree. Phenomenal movie. So yeah, I thought this was a great pick. I did like the yin yang comparisons, and I did think it was a nice match for the film for Oppenheimer. Let's do one last movie. We'll do my movie, Social Network. I picked this because it Oppenheimer and Zuckerberg have a lot in common for me. I both feel like both of them dropped a bomb on society, and both of them are in a lot of ways to blame where current society is dealing with the ramification of an invention that in both cases they didn't just like come up with in a vacuum like genius inspiration, but was built upon and predicated on a lot of other people's ideas that had preceded them. And then, of course, we're caught up in ownership of that idea. Albert Einstein gets blamed for the bomb. Oppenheimer gets blamed for the bomb. Obviously, Truman gets blamed for the bomb. And inside of all of this, you've got the one guy who claims like it was his fault or his, that he earned it. And I think Zuckerberg was in a similar place with all the dispute over who owned Facebook, the Facebook. So
Steven Soderbergh. Or
yes.
not Steven Soderbergh.
Sorkin.
Aaron Sorkin.
Aaron Sorkin wrote
based
it.
on the book by Baron Mesrick, who there was this weird thing.
He accidental billionaires.
I think he had 21 before that about the MIT kids who raked over Las Vegas.
Yep.
And it was right about this time because that book came out and the Michael Lewis Moneyball book came out right about the same time.
Right.
Which Moneyball, great movie if you haven't seen it. Jesse Eisenberg in consecutive movies played people I hate.
Which you're supposed to hate him in this movie. I don't know what the other movie. I'm assuming the other movie was BVS, but
yes, because you know who he's imitating? He met Max. His dad did American Werewolf in London. Oh my God, the big director. Anyway, I'm not gonna remember. So he's imitating in BVS, playing Lex Luthor, the guy who wrote Chronicle.
So he's imitating a screenwriter.
Yes, who is obnoxious like that.
Okay.
So he played Zuckerberg in this one movie. And I think the thing about his portrayal of Zuckerberg is Zuckerberg doesn't realize he's an asshole.
Correct.
Because there's that discussion with Rashida Jones at the end where she's like, I don't think you're an asshole. I just think you keep trying really hard to be one.
Yep. And I think they try to redeem him a little bit at the end. I don't know that it necessarily works. Same with Oppenheimer for me. You can't just show me that Downey Jr. is horrible and then claim that it makes Oppenheimer good. It doesn't. That's not how it works. Max Landis. All right.
Yes. Asshole.
We've got Lincoln's secretary is called Mary Todd the Hellcat because her mood swings were so terror filled. We got sex scene on the stairs, but I like the one in the bed better. That's just me. How do you forget that, Carlito? Come on.
Oh, I just realized I was on mute because my microphone's crap, so it keeps shorting out and stuff. I'm gonna have to buy a new one.
He says, I think I liked Eastern Promises better, but I can't really recall much of either one. Oh, History of Violence is so good.
Justin Timberlake as the guy from Napster was interesting.
Very good, right? Now,
dude, Andrew Garfield in that film, though. Holy crap!
Yeah,
he was awesome.
Fincher goes away from doing his regular kinds of movies to do this.
Yeah, it's a very different kind of film for him. It feels more like a Sorkin film, like a traditional Sorkin film.
Kind of does.
Which is probably why I like it so much. I think it's. I hate Zuckerberg, and it's a perfect like skewering of him and his mental state.
Oh, he pushed everybody who would have possibly ended him between Eduardo and then once Sean Parker, the Timberlake character, got arrested with those interns for having cocaine. Yep. He basically got him aced off of there. And the ending where he's like, well, why are we... And Rashida Jones is like, Okay, let me ask you about the guy with the horse. Yeah, the trial people would hate you.
Yeah.
They would always rule against you. I wish Napster was still around so I could
So for me, I just feel like these two guys, Zuckerberg and Oppenheimer, vibe a lot. I feel like these films are both trying to do the same thing with characters that are incredibly noteworthy and labeled as geniuses in both
Evil
cases.
Geniuses.
Both of them incredibly talented, but in both cases creating something without really thinking through. What is that Jurassic Park line, right? They were so busy thinking about if they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. And in both cases, society is left dealing with those ramifications. And the difference, I guess, is that Oppenheimer remained incredibly apologetic at the end of his life, and Zuckerberg is incredibly gung-ho that he should keep going and creating more modes for his business going forward.
The metaverse.
Just leeching off of all of us.
Exactly.
Taking every dime.
So any thoughts on this one, Dan, and how it connects for you for Oppenheimer or doesn't connect?
So I feel like Zuckerberg plays the victim in this movie. Like, he's misunderstood. Nobody understands him.
Right.
Where I don't ever feel like Oppenheimer doesn't think he's the victim.
Huh.
His wife does. She's the one telling him that she's like, they're trying to crucify you. They're trying to end you. He's like, nah. So, I mean, he might be more innocent to a degree or naive.
Okay, that makes sense.
Zuckerberg he's greasy. Like, he's not Italian, but he easily could be. And saying this is a Sicilian, that he 100% like probably should have an uncle named Sal.
That's great. What about you, Carlito? What do you recall from? I don't think you had a chance to see Social Network anytime recently, but like in your memory, how do you compare these films or these historical characters?
Well, you pretty much nailed it. I will say I like Oppenheimer as a person way more than I do Zuckerberg. Yeah, I don't feel like there's an ounce of empathy in Zuckerberg at all. I really like the memes out there making him out that he's like a lizard person too. That's pretty awesome.
he's a sweaty android.
Yeah, or a sweaty android. But yeah, it was a great pick as far as the vibes, because like you said, dropping bombs on society. But I haven't seen it since probably it came out. I remember seeing it in the theater, and I don't know, I wasn't really a fan of it. I just don't like Zuckerberg, I think. So, but I mean, as far as the movie, how it was made, I mean, Fincher did amazing. And Andrew Garfield, I really liked his character in that. Not a big fan of the Winklevoss twins, but
I think they're all very unsympathetic characters for the most part.
This movie got him the Lone Ranger role. That was gonna do gangbusters.
Yeah, even the president of Harvard or whatever, that guy, I mean, just a bunch of I don't know, sycophantic losers in my opinion. But
I read the book. I read the book, Bearded, and it's a very accurate portrayal of that book for sure for me.
Is it?
Yes.
Which apparently Sorkin didn't read until like 80% through the script.
Nice.
Let's see here. So I guess that takes us through all of our movies. Do we want to kind of like go beyond just the ones that we chose to think about some of the ones we almost picked or thought about later? I know, Dan, you had a bunch of them. Do you want to run through some of yours?
I got to look through what I sent you.
Oh, sorry.
I do remember, though, in particular, 8 Men Out I was late on.
Yes,
that was one
John Sayles. Yeah.
You and I always have the I almost picked.
Right.
Insert.
Sorry, I thought you had a bunch ready, so I didn't mean to put you on the spot like that. Carlito, were there other ones that you had considered? Were you like, I almost
Not really.
want this, or wow,
Nope.
okay,
Lincoln was my first choice, and that was it. And I think he's obviously a very sympathetic character in that movie. I think, and
Lincoln,
just in general.
you mean Lincoln?
Yeah, Lincoln. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think of all of our characters, you look at Whiplash, Oppenheimer, Lincoln, Social Network. I mean, Abe is really the most sympathetic of all of them by a long shot.
I remember the one I almost picked, and it would have Citizen Kane.
Great pick. Yeah, great. That's a phenomenal pick. That's an excellent well, yeah. Speak on it. What were you thinking? Yeah,
it's just very hard to come across at this point.
I've got the nice DVD of it. That would work
because Kane, Charles Foster Kane, he fixated on this child sled, Rosebud, but he's obsessed with becoming the best, the greatest throughout. You know, he's got his horrors. He's becoming a political figure. He has his downfall.
Sure.
But yet this only thing that made him happy was this sled, Rosebud. He's on his dying deathbed saying Rosebud, and everybody's trying to figure out what it is. It's the sled.
Yeah.
To Kill a Mockingbird's another one, just due to the trial thing that was... To Kill a Mockingbird is my favorite movie ever made.
That's my aunt's favorite movie.
Gregory Peck puts on one of the greatest performances like ever put on film, at least. People have said they became lawyers because they watched that movie because of Gregory Peck.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't doubt it. Gore mentions Citizen Kane reminds him of Bugsy and The Dream to Build Vegas. For me, Citizen Kane, the movie that's closest to Citizen Kane, at least, is, and I think Oliver Stone has said it, was Nixon. And that his whole design of the way he wrote and crafted his movie Nixon was all about trying to make a sympathetic character out of somebody that was so horrible. And that was near my list. I just hate that movie so much I didn't want to pick it. But what I'm learning from this show tonight is that, like, I don't like Oppenheimer, and all these movies that vibe with it, I don't like them either. It's like
see,
it's an umbrella. The movie that I would rank the highest out of all our movies tonight is Lincoln. I enjoyed that one the most, and then Social Network would be right under it.
And I like Bearded's pick, but I hate how that movie like glorifies.
I hate that movie.
Jordan,
it's
Jordan guy.
It
just it frustrates me. I don't know. But
you and I've talked a little bit about how that movie is like Scarface in the fact that there's an entire generation that admires that movie.
It's not. I didn't
and holds it up as this like goal.
Right.
So there was a certain point in time where like every college kid had Scarface posters.
I was one of them.
Or they had Fight Club.
Yeah.
Fight Club is such a cringe movie
a misunderstood movie.
Yes. I don't think anybody understands what
like
they
Starship
were trying
Troopers.
to say in it.
Starship Troopers is the same way. People think that it's saying one thing, but it's also, satire. It's saying the opposite.
American Psycho is another one that people do not.
I can't stand that movie.
I love it.
Oh.
By the way, I have to go return some videotapes.
You're running late to the store. Yeah.
I wish that was still a thing.
I worked in a video store quite a number of years.
Worked in a comic book store. I'm doing my part.
You are, Greg. You're from the chat. You're working.
Greg's doing some good chatting.
You got it, Greg. You're going to be on the next vibe check, so just buckle
up.
Paul
Verhoeven, RoboCop, great.
Yeah.
Starship Troopers, I love it. It's cheesy.
Still have never seen it.
I love it.
Never seen it.
Perfect satire, but the problem is people who take it at face
don't
value
understand it's satire.
Don't realize that it's satire, and then it doesn't work. But obviously, Total Recall, great movie.
Oh yeah.
I think I'm one of like 3 people that doesn't like Fight Club, so I just usually stay out of those conversations.
It is satire in the same kind of way. It's not what it is on face value.
Right.
And I think people who take it at face value, like Scarface or Wolf of Wall Street or any of these movies are missing the point that these are cautionary tales.
Right.
And then you can understand, much like in Starship Troopers, that this is what happens if you don't heed the warning signs.
I do like that it made me aware of that great song though at the end. That's awesome.
the Pixies, yeah.
Yeah,
Where's My Mind?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a great song. And really well executed film. I think it's a hard film to watch, and I think it's incredibly disturbing about the in some ways the state of masculinity in the nation or the world, and that's scary for sure.
I'd rather watch Memento.
Well, that's
or the Star's Spartacus show over and over again before I'd watch Fight Club again.
Ouch.
But
I remember the movie. I remember another movie I was going to pick.
Felt like shots at Memento there, but I'm going to skip right over that and let Dan finish his comment.
A Few Good Men.
Ooh.
The trial parts of that fucking Jack Nicklaus is magic in that movie.
Nicholson.
Nicholson. Yeah, sorry.
I don't think
too many ciders. But
so you were thinking Fight Club, A Few Good Men would vibe with Oppenheimer
because of the tribunal stuff. You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. I'd do it again.
See, what I was looking for was a film about a controversial figure that was attempting to try to understand their psyche.
Oh,
in the same way Oppenheimer was, or Lincoln, or Whiplash. It felt like films that were trying to look at controversial characters through the lens of understanding. Like what can we understand?
Tried.
Right?
The Malcolm X movie.
Yeah. Powerful.
And this also takes us back to Carlito and I have talked many, many times about how we think Denzel Washington is underrated as an actor. Like his catalog is awesome.
Yeah, he is a superb performer, and now becoming a superb filmmaker as well. As a director, I think he's been making some. I don't know if you saw Antoine Fisher or Fences.
Didn't see Fences,
but he's got a lot of skill. I didn't see the most recent one he did, something Esquire, but I didn't see that one.
Sorry, I didn't get to watch Whiplash, Dan. It's my bad.
It's okay.
I will watch it.
I didn't get to watch Lincoln because, and I'm going to say this, fucking Social Network shouldn't be that hard to watch.
Not that old, right?
No, it's not.
Yeah, you'd think it would be on some social media stuff.
He's bought the rights and he's burying
it.
Probably, yeah.
Whiplash is on Netflix right now for anybody who wants to watch.
Don't do it.
So I would say watch for the performances, and I'm just going to tell you, you're going to watch it once.
And until Dan makes you watch it again for a YouTube stream.
No, if you try to fucking come to John or I and say the end is positive.
It's a parable, right? It's a scary cautionary tale like some of those others we mentioned.
So this is the thing, like they're like, oh, it's a happy ending. I was like, are you fucking insane? They're like, but he's smiling. I was like, because he just mentally snapped. That's why he's smiling.
Dan, you mentioned we as we often do when you and I talk, we touch on that world of Hannibal and Silence of the Lambs. I hate the book Hannibal because at the end, if you don't know, the ending is akin to Whiplash because Hannibal and Clarice run off together. That's the end of Hannibal, is they are on a plane living happily ever after, going off together.
What's wrong with that?
Tell me his name, Doc.
That is literally like a horror ending akin to Whiplash, where the kid decides I'm going to throw my whole life away for this abusive relationship. That's what the end of Hannibal, the book, was. And at least the one thing they got right in making that movie was deciding she would never run away with this guy. This is a stupid, ridiculous ending. And so they didn't let Julianne Moore run away with him, at least. But for me, when you mentioned it and discussing Whiplash, I thought in my head, holy crap. It is related because they tried it in the movie Hannibal, that the abusive relationship got so bad that Jodie's character, I guess, that Clarice would actually run away with Hannibal Lecter to live happily ever after. I can't believe that someone of that caliber, Thomas Harris, decided that that's how he wanted to end that series.
We have a little extra time, and since Celluloid and Scotch has been on a bit of a break lately, Carlito has been on this journey of watching movies in March.
And I'm way behind too.
Carlito finally watched The Thing.
Oh, really? The original?
Yeah, I'm so glad I got the Blu-ray too. Because have you watched it? The Blu-ray remaster was amazing.
I don't have it yet.
So or 4K. Sorry,
I got the 4K. Yes.
Okay, yeah.
The extras on the Blu-ray though.
I don't have a 4K player.
That's the only thing that sucks. Is there's no extras, but I got to watch a lot of extras on YouTube after I watched it. So because there's a lot on there.
It's an iconic.
He's heard me going on and on about
how
that
do you
fucking movie.
I guess my first
I can't believe
question
it took me so long.
How do you feel that the special effects hold up for you?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Because I mean, for the most part, obviously there's a couple things in there, but most of them were practical.
Yeah,
all
of it.
Yeah. So that's my thing. I love it. You know, that's why some of these movies that have been done in like almost all CGI, they just don't hold up because eventually the technology gets better and they do, better CGI, and you can look back and be like, oh God, how could I sit down and watch that whole thing?
Rob Bottin's first job as a special effects guy.
Oh.
Lady Fantastic.
He worked for Rick
Hey,
Baker.
Lady F.
He worked for Rick Baker, but that was his first job on his own.
Really?
That's right. Fright Night Resistance. Believe it.
What did you think of? Were there any scenes that stood out for you? Any moments you were like, "Wow, that was amazing"?
Yes, I can't recall them off the top of my head right now.
For me, I got to say the scene. Obviously, everybody talks about the ending. We'll get to that in a second. But like for me, it's the scene when he's got all of them tied up and he's testing their blood. It is the greatest sequence because the intensity is always there as an audience because number one, he has no way for sure to know if his test is even going to work. It could absolutely fail. Two, he doesn't know who could be the monster. So at every moment it's like, will it be, won't be. And you keep getting the shocking twists of what's, revealed. So well done. And then of course, when the horror actually happens, it's so much scarier than you thought it would be and so much more shocking than you thought it would be. And the couch is lifting up and then the flamethrower is not working. And it's just like that scene is pure like Hitchcockian tension for me.
Yes. It's even better than what I'd imagined. And even if it's possible, better than what Dan talked it up to be when I saw it.
So Jen's favorite thing was Wilford Brimley freaking out.
Oh, yes. That's one of my favorites too. That was pretty awesome.
And breaking all the like communications equipment.
Speaking of Jen, she's very close to hitting her goal. It's on the brink. Tessa was having everybody for her birthday donate to Jen's GoFundMe. It's called Keep Jen Reading.
I'll drop the link. Give me a sec here.
So she's very close. So I've been bad about promoting it. I suck.
She's $260 away. And here's the link right there.
If you guys want to do a great thing for a great person, I can't go into enough details about how much Jen means to me and how much she's helped me over the years. But if you can, it would be a great milestone to hit to do it. I know John did a mystery box sale, like 40 different boxes. Bueller has done many things. I've donated. John is owed a slap to Greg at some point.
I've been stretching my hand out, getting it ready.
Tessa sold some books to donate money after she sold them. So there's been a lot of work towards it. Also, I see Perry here, and I saw Perry just got a big YouTube plaque in the mail the other day.
He did 100K subscribers.
Yeah, they still get the money if they don't pass the goal, but we just want to hit that.
And even more important, Don, they can continue to stretch the goal beyond if she has more need, because we know that something like cancer involves hospital stays that you did not predict, that are not built into your budget. And you'll often be stuck, with infections and issues that arise that are
She's
not
had 2
part
already.
that are not part of your chemotherapy plans. So it's good to be able to stretch beyond the goal. So obviously that's our first target. And then we go beyond, to wherever her end goal needs to be.
And a big shout out to Brian from Marvel by the Month, who had John and I on a very organized Zoom call at the very beginning of this. And a shout out to Rodney and everybody else, Rodney Barnes, for promoting it. We had Philip Kennedy Johnson repost. We had Sean Lewis. A lot of great people. I think Luana, Vecchia. It's interesting when creators also notice your friends and help out.
Right.
We've managed to meet some great people over the years, and means the world to me, to Jen, and everybody else. I hate to bring it down at the end, but
no, I think this is very valuable. So again, $260 from her goal means if you want to share that link, if you want to highlight it on your Instagrams or your Facebooks or your social media, whatever, or if you can donate a little bit to help it, we will get there, and I think we're all going to be very happy when we do.
Yeah, gonna be great. I made the mistake this week of watching that Quiet on the Set documentary. Holy fuck. Nickelodeon, you got some you got some splaining to do. Holy shit.
Let's not go too far down there. We were hearing about Carlitos and enjoying the thing.
Yeah, Carlito also has been watching some other horror movies. I know he hated Slumber Party Massacre.
I didn't hate it. I hated the second one. Oh my god. I wish I had that time back, but luckily it was fairly short. I know how much you love that dance stuff, Dan.
What about Pamela Springsteen and
actually I weirdly kind of, and she was perfect for the role. I will say that. It's just a little weird.
Yeah, Sleepaway Camp Part 2 and 3, Bruce Springsteen's sister is the killer in it.
Yikes.
Spoilers.
I think 3 just went all out camp. 2 was all right. A little amped up on the camp, but
Part 1 was something.
Part 1 will always be number
1. You also watched something called Terrified, which I had never heard of.
Oh yeah. That was a psychological indie short, or not short, but I mean I don't think it was that long, but yeah, that one surprised me. Have you watched it yet? No,
I have not.
I'd say check it out. I think it's on let's say either Tubi or it might have been under Shudder, I think, actually.
I watched Lisa Frankenstein and I regretted that immediately.
Lisa Frankenstein. I don't think I've seen that one.
It's by Diablo Cody. It's enough said. It was on.
Okay.
I've been at a con the last 2 days, Greg. I don't have a whole lot of energy.
Yeah,
I told these guys like 9:00. I'm gonna crash. My 9:00 my time.
Because I was like, I mean, we're getting there.
So what else is new, John? You've been around everywhere.
I mean,
on all the socials with pictures of people. I saw someone got a picture with you that I didn't even know.
Daniel Arzola or
I can't remember.
I saw Daniel. I saw a lot of people. Alonzo, a lot of the local SoCal kind of crew were meeting up. So it was nice to see those guys and gals. I can't
even bother to go to cons in my own town.
I got one a year in me usually. I can kind of like save a little budget and put some effort into one a year.
So next year you're gonna do C2E2?
I have no idea, but I'm hopeful that I can save enough to fly to a con next year. It's going to depend where my what work life for me and my wife are like next year. But I would love to be able to travel to a con again next year. Some of the guys from this con are trying to convince me to go to San Diego Comic-Con when it comes around in the summer, but I don't know that I can make that happen. It's always a tenuous idea. Plus, I don't do well with crowds that big. It is a madhouse.
Gambit's at Puerto Rico Comic-Con.
Just one. I did see Swagglehouse walking around, Dawn. I did see Swagglehouse, but he doesn't know who I am. I'm not going to talk to that guy.
Heroes is the one I was told to go to in North Carolina. Everybody said like that's the
I
one.
hear
it's the best to go to.
And I know that a bunch of the New England area folk go to Terrificon in I think it's in Jersey or Connecticut.
Connecticut.
And I've never tried that. I know the family would love to go back east and go to New York or something.
Who can say no to that? You could slap Greg and have a place to stay.
I mean, I'm in.
GalaxyCon in Columbus.
There's gonna need to be someone like filming the whole thing, and then we're gonna have to have it in slow motion.
Can we do like the slap contest?
I gotta like make sure whatever I do, I just sneak up on him so he doesn't see it coming. And it's like pow, and then everybody who's there at the con is be like, "Holy crap! Did he just assault that guy?"
No, we already said it can't be.
And I paid $100 to do it.
Can't be a sucker slap. You have to let him know. There has to be an alerting.
Yeah, you got to like stand on each side of a table and slap.
Greg, isn't that a long ways to go for you? Terrificon all the way up to Connecticut? That's a long way to go for you.
By the way, Greg had a good question in the chat earlier.
Yeah.
Who would I want to play Caitlin Clark in a movie?
I don't know who Caitlin Clark is.
And I was trying to think about it. That's okay, John. One of these days you'll catch up. But
sports thing? Oh gosh, it is a sport. That's what Dan was saying, that it's a basketball, women's basketball, college basketball thing.
Yep, all-time leading scorer, baby. What's up? Anyway, I don't know. It's a good quote. My brother thinks
this
that
is Toby. Don Gustavo is Toby. All right, there it is. Thanks, Toby.
Toby.
I like the name though, Don Gustavo. You sound very The Godfather. Done the drive the last 2 years. It's a 12-hour drive. Yikes. Damn, you and Justin Birch for 12 hours in a car. I mean, pass, buddy. Just hard pass.
Where is Bearded at then?
He's in the Midwest, right? He's
Ohio.
Ohio.
Ohio. Did I ever leave Ohio?
Well, that's all I had for tonight, gentlemen. One last thing I definitely got to know. I said we would come back around to it. What did you think about the ending to The Thing? Because it is often regarded as one of those classic, we're not going to tell you what happens endings. And some people love that kind of movie. Some people hate that kind of movie. How are you feeling about how they ended it?
Typically, I hate those kind of movies.
Sure.
But I actually loved it. I thought it was fitting. And yeah, if you're asking my thoughts on the whole, is he or isn't he? Or are they or whatever? I don't even know. I'm not going to go there. I like the ending.
Does it even matter, right?
Yeah, does it even matter? I don't know. I liked it. I will say, though, I think I've mentioned this to you guys in the chat, but on here, I want to say the whole time I'm feeling that Chris Carter stole one of his X-Files episodes, Ice, the first season, from this movie.
I think
because it really felt like it.
You'll notice a lot of movies took ideas from this film. I think
it's a classic,
and it's a remake in its own right? From an old 50s or something movie called The Thing from Outer Space.
But it's done closer to the book Who Goes There that it's based off of.
Correct.
God, I hate that I know that. The one thing that I do love is the last line of Keith David and
Kurt Russell
sitting there where they're like, well, I guess we're just going to sit around here and see what happens. Neither of us are in any shape to do anything.
Right.
And then it just starts pulling back and you just see everything on fire. And it has that dun, 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 dun. Enrico Morricone.
Yes.
Spaghetti Western. And
one of the few times that John Carpenter didn't do his own music.
Because he was a huge fan of spaghetti.
Because who wouldn't pick Enrico to do that music if they could?
But it was just it's just pulling away, and you just see the two of them sitting there. Everything's on fire, and they're gonna freeze to death.
Yeah. Or
that music was that was great too. Now that I remember,
builds the tension, and as it's just pulling away, and he's got the bottle of brandy, and of course Kurt Russell in the beginning playing that chess game. He's like, fucking bored anyway.
Oh yeah.
Over it. It's Adrian Barbeau's voice.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Greg, what question do you want me to answer? Come on.
Who would you cast to play the female basketball player?
Oh, I don't know.
As usual, an unnecessary question.
Sure. I'll get back to you, Greg. I'll message you.
We don't have necessarily an idea for our next vibe check. I think we may ask Greg, the bearded comic bro, to give us a movie to build a show around, something that he really loves or really wants us to watch. And then I'm going to be very careful what I allow him to choose. And then we'll throw it to the group as we always do to see who wants to join and watch those vibes.
Since we changed the format a little bit to one central movie, I think it's a little bit easier
to fit multiple guests.
Well, yeah, because before we were just each picking a movie. We didn't have a central movie.
Even with just you and I, it was 4 movies. You throw another, you're at 6 movies, and it's a lot. Vision Quest. What the? See, this is why we don't invite you. This is why we can't have nice things.
Vision Quest was a good movie.
The top casino YouTube BC slots plays at my casino with 500,000 subscribers, so the competition is tough. Yikes. I'm gonna get us out of here. We got 6 minutes left, and I'm tired. So
what do you got coming up, John?
Nothing. Yeah. I got vacation coming up. I'm probably gonna do some, videos and clips of.
Are you going to Wally World?
I'm not. No. Me and the girls are going up into the mountains. We rented a little cabin for a few days next week, and we'll just be sitting by the fire, reading books, playing board games and cards, and getting fat, and maybe going on some hikes.
Are you taking the cursing robot with you? That'd be cool.
I'm not planning that. Gore said I picked a good one, John. You can't deny it now. I can deny it. I deny often. I am a denier.
As long as it's not Fright Night.
Fright Night. The original Fright Night was good.
It's near Big Bear, Don. We sometimes do Big Bear. There's another place called Lake Arrowhead that's within about an hour of that. So there's a lot of good cabin rentals up this time of year where people aren't, they don't want to be up there in the snowy weather, so they rent their places out Airbnb style, and you can get good deals. But yeah, what about you, Dan? Anything coming up that you want to mention?
So at some point, the Dune Over's coming back to do a review of Dune Part 2. Probably going to have our good buddy, the G-Man, Robert, back on because he was on with us last year. Don't know if Jen's going to be able to join us, but Scott will, and kind of see how that goes. It's always nice to have Carlito on, who didn't read the book, so he's not tainted by having to go, well, in the book.
I still haven't seen the movie yet. I got to get around to the movie at some point.
John. Oh, you got to see it in IMAX, man, if you can.
I go to so few movies these days.
The 4K Steelbook already sold out everywhere before I knew it was on sale.
Jeez.
I didn't even think it was on pre-order yet.
Yeah. Walmart already sold out of their copies. But the end of April, the last weekend, Sean Lewis and his artist Jonathan Marks Batavecchia will be coming on to talk Pirate Bear Viking Queen with us. It's coming out May 1st.
That's almost as good a title as Dick Fight Island.
Sean Lewis was a great guest when he came on last time. Jen is going to try and make it on, and I think Tess is going to try and be on it from C2E2.
Nice.
We'll see how that goes, but I have not actually had a artist on who has been actively working on a book before for a whole creative team, so that'll be interesting. But I already got to read the comic. It is all hand-painted. It's pretty interesting. 72 pages for $5.99.
Nice.
So very excited to talk to Sean, find out more stories of his son negging him. He was all proud that he was getting to write Superman. He went home and told his son. His son goes, "Yeah, but when are you going to write Plastic Man?" He's never had a book in a long time.
There you go.
That was one of the funny stories he told last time, and also about Todd McFarlane cold calling him while he was at his parents' house to start writing Spawn.
Nice.
But
okay.
Yes, Spirited, Sean Lewis, the thumbs is great, especially talking about screens and technology.
And it sounds like Greg's got an interview with Alex Segura coming up, the writer of the new Dick Tracy comic. Okay, good to know.
Dick Tracy, just a couple of dicks, the sequel.
Well, Carlito, you got anything that we should be aware of? Are you going to C2E2 coming up here? Are you doing anything?
Not this year, no. I'm probably going to go hop on with Jigs and Jigs Kingdom, hang out.
Is he doing a show tonight?
I think so.
I know that Simon is on. Mad Spidey's on.
Oh, is he?
I saw he was still going. When Lady F jumped in here, I think she must have just jumped off of there.
Carlito's just building a shrine to Caitlin Clark, like a.
I'm not going to let you derail me. We got seconds left.
Also, Marvel, fuck you for putting Roy Thomas now as the creator of Wolverine and taking Len Wein's name off of. Go fuck yourself.
That's a shock.
Wait, why the fuck would they do that?
Just found that out the other day because Roy Thomas said that as an editor, he told them to make him Canadian. So apparently that makes him the creator. And they took Len Wein's name off of. Rob Liefeld, of all people, is involved in this fight with Marvel now. So,
wow.
I'm actually siding with Rob Liefeld for once.
All right. I'm not going to let Dan go any further because we're not dealing with comic books.
You can look it up.
But we will be back for more Vibe Checks. Definitely check it out. We'll see you guys again.
I'm not correct.